Hello, this is Heather Hoffman, and today I'm going to share a fun technique to use masking fluid and watercolor paints to do some ink smooshing over to make some ink splattered watercolor stripes. It's kind of hard to explain all in a word, but I'm using the Nuvo masking fluid. This was my first time using it, and I was really impressed with it. And I start off with some sturdy watercolor paper, and I added just thin stripes of the masking fluid, and I'm using an inexpensive wide brush just to spread those out so they kind of have a loose watercolor effect on there. So once that's done, I set that aside to dry. It said to make sure it's dry. It didn't take very long. I think maybe I left it for a good hour and it was dry. I don't know if it took less time than that, but it kind of gets shiny and feels really smooth when it's dry. And then I pulled out some distress ink, and you can use a piece of acetate. I'm just using a clear stamp storage envelope. Anything like that works. And I used Mermaid Lagoon distress ink for this. And I rubbed it on my clear envelope and misted it with a little bit of water, and then I'm just smooshing that over the top, right over the masking fluid. And the masking fluid's going to resist, so once everything's dried, I'll be able to peel that off, and those areas underneath will stay white, which is kind of fun. So it's almost like a reverse watercolor stripe on there. And I'm using a damp little baby cloth, a damp baby wipe, just to dry off the area on the masking fluid. You could wait till everything's dry and do it. I just felt like it wiped off really quick and easy that way, and then I don't have to worry about smearing that ink later when I'm removing the masking fluid. Now for a second step, I'm coming over with Blueprint Sketch Distress Ink. This hasn't dried completely, it's still a little bit damp, and I'm adding some splatters over just for a little more fun texture. Normally if you did watercolor stripes, you wouldn't be able to get the splatter mixed in there as well without it going in the areas that are masked off. So this is kind of a fun way to get that effect. I really like how it comes out when it's all finished. So once again, I'm going to use that damp cloth and just clean the ink off of the masking fluid areas so that I don't have to worry about doing it later. Just using the tip of my finger. I'm trying to be careful not to rub on the damp part because I don't want to mess up that there. So either way you want to do it, if you want to wait and do it later. And then I'm going to set that aside and let it dry. And then it peels off just like magic. It's amazing how easy it is. You can get a little gum artist eraser to help if you need. I found just my fingertips, it peeled off really easy. You could either just rub it, or if you could get a hold of that piece, it just peeled off. Like I said, I've used other masking fluid and not had it work so well. So I was really impressed with how easily this worked. And this is one of the fun new supplies that Unity actually is carrying now, so I can see myself using this for lots of different things. This was just one fun technique that I really enjoyed with it. Okay, and then once that's peeled off, now you just have a smooth piece of watercolor cardstock. There was a little bit that had leaked over to the back, so I peeled that off just so I didn't have to mess with it later. Now I'm going to add an image over the top using the January 2008 sentiment kit called So Very Grateful, and because of the textured watercolor paper, I'm going to use my Misty to stamp it on. This will just allow me to stamp it multiple times with the texture of the watercolor paper and make sure I get a nice clear impression. And I'm going to fit my sentiment into one of those little white stripe areas. So once I've picked that up on there, I make sure my sentiment is still straight, and then I'm using just VersaFine Onyx Black ink. You could use any kind of ink. I really like this ink for watercolor paper. It gives a nice good crisp impression. And I stamped it twice, and by then my sentiment was on there nice and clear, so I went ahead and just took that off, but I still wanted to add more to the rest of the image, and it looks like I'm pushing really hard on my Misty. I'm not. My table was just kind of wiggling, so if it looked like I was just about to break it, I really wasn't there. But just pressing firm and trying to get over it a little smoother so my table didn't move as much. And now I've got a great impression on there. And just to add one more layer to this, I pulled out my Nuvo just glitter drops in Blizzard. That's just a clear sparkle. You could use stickles or any kind of glitter glue. And I'm going to fill in that heart and each of the large flower blooms on there. And that's just going to add a fun little bit of sparkle and interest to the finished card. So, fun way to pull out your masking fluid and use it in a different way. I hope you give this a try. I'd love to see what you make. Thanks so much for coming by. Have a great day.